Well, I am excited, and it is Tuesdays with Tony, as we have referred to this before. Thrilled to get us started. And Tony, I have to say, you have a fan club. As you know, we've already heard from a couple of previous guests that have tuned in for other segments of the Fundraising Academy, Cause Selling Education. And this individual literally was like, I cannot wait for today. You know, we're moving into another phase and this is new. So glad to have you here as a representative, of course, with Fundraising Academy to share more with us and all of our viewers about the Cause Selling Education. So thank you, Tony, for not only being here, but being a sponsor. You see that purple, it's right there in front of you also in the presenting sponsor slide. We are so grateful to have Fundraising Academy and each and every one of these amazing companies. You know, they're here to elevate our show, our conversation, but they're really here to elevate you. And I'm pointing at the camera because it's all of you that are watching. That's right. Thank you for joining me, because they really are here to lean into your cause, help you provide solutions to the problems in your community. So thank you to our presenting sponsors. Please do go find them online, give them a like and some love. And Julia, thank you for creating the nonprofit show. Julia is the CEO of the American Nonprofit. I am so thrilled to join you each and every morning to serve with you on the nonprofit show. I'm Jarrett Ransom, also known as the Nonprofit Nerd, CEO of the Raven Group. And this week, I feel like has already been chocked full, but it is only Tuesday.
It's only Tuesday.
It's only Tuesday. And again, we're kind of calling it Tuesdays with Tony. And we didn't name that, but one of our raving fans definitely did. So Tony Beall, thank you and welcome back.
Thank you so much. You know, I say it all the time. I really look forward to our conversations. I welcome the opportunity to be able to share the cause selling strategies with fundraisers across the country and worldwide, right? Because your distribution of the nonprofit show is so phenomenal. But it's always a pleasure, and I always look forward to the conversation. So thank you again for welcoming me back.
Well, it's a lot of fun, and it's been really great to, over time, in a calm and very meticulous way, to break this down. And so before we get going on today, let's quickly chat about cause selling. It's actually, I don't know, do you like the word formula or process or approach? Like,
yeah, I typically say process or approach, right? It is a roadmap to be successful with relationship-driven fundraising.
Love it. Well, today we're starting on phase 3, which blows my mind. We're already at phase 3. And we're going to be talking about step 7, which is dun, 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 dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
My favorite thing.
The ask.
Eyes lit up.
It's almost like the proposal. It's the ask. There's, I guess, almost as much anxiety around it for some folks as a proposal.
You know, Jarrett always, her eyes light up. She always says, I get really excited. I get really, energized to do this. And I always think, that's the magic. When you have somebody like Jarrett who gets excited and see this as an opportunity, that's what we should all be striving for.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, and I said this during our last episode, I believe, Tony, oh my God, I wish I had this process when I was like earlier in my career, because I would have felt so much joy that I feel today early on. So this is such a great system, such a great process for everyone, regardless of where you are in your career.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Jarrett. And I know I sound like a broken record around that as well. I always, am saying the same thing. I wish I had had this, 20 some years ago when I first stepped into the sector. It would have been much more successful and felt more empowered if I had had this type of curriculum to help guide me early in my career.
Yeah, I agree. And as this slide shows, mindset, right? And I believe I live wholeheartedly in my life about mindset, like this growth model mindset. How is our mind, because we ourselves can be our own worst enemies to not achieve a goal, not to achieve a goal. So talk to us about the mindset here.
Yeah, so the mindset is that, because we have been great cause selling champions and we've successfully gone through the other steps of the cycle, by the time we get to the ask, we're confirming the gift. We understand where the donor is in terms of their capacity to give, their passion about the organization, the cause, the work that we're doing. So it really is a confirmation of the gift more so than an ask. Because again, we've built the relationship. By the time you get to this place, they're anticipating that question.
Yes.
I love that. And I'm so struck with what you had said earlier, and that was the empowerment. And if you followed this path, it's going to be more comfortable for everyone, is what I hear you saying. Not just,
absolutely.
For the donor, for your team, for yourself, for whomever you might take to that meeting, it's going to be a lot more natural,
I want to add even the board member, because often I think when we can engage our board members in making the ask and really any part of this system, I think it continues to empower other people, right? And so we're modeling how the system works. And so the board member may not be the first point of contact, but he or they are part of the process. And when it comes to the ask, they may play a role in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Depending on how that potential donor has ended up on your prospecting list, it might have been a referral from a board member. So at some point, you're going to want to, engage the board member in the process because they have an existing relationship. And Jarrett, you brought up something really interesting that we haven't really talked about in relation to cost selling. Like I said, it's a roadmap for relationship-driven fundraising. And we talk a lot about that being the relationship that we develop one-on-one, with a potential donor. Where I've seen the board member participation really provide great outcomes is in sponsorship, right? So when you are sitting down with a corporation or someone and you bring that board member in, just the level of credibility around the organization, because this board member who they know is volunteering their time cares so much to invest their time to come to that meeting and represent. So I say that because this cycle also works when you are building relationships with those key gatekeepers or decision makers within corporations for sponsorships.
Great point, Tony.
Super, super important idea. And I think that it also gives permission to those board members to get involved and to see what goes on, as opposed to just reading the reports once a month and then, kind of shaming the development team, which we all know. I mean, we've all seen that, unfortunately. Okay,
you said it, Julie. I didn't say it.
Well, I'm sorry, but I think, there's a bee in my office.
But Jared, thank you for bringing that up, because we need to often remind ourselves of how board members can be engaged in this team activity.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Uh-oh, Julie is being bombarded over there.
Did you see that?
About the closing, ABC, always be closing. This is a great segment of a movie. And, it has come up so often in my life about ABC, and that means always be closing. So how does the model, or the system rather, Tony, how does it address the closing of this?
Yeah, so basically what we're saying here is, always be closing, is being mindful that every interaction with your potential donor is leading to supporting your closing from that very first moment of interaction, that moment of truth that I call it, that first engagement, whether it's on the phone, whether it's via Zoom, whether, you're out at a coffee shop, whatever that is, be mindful that you're always closing. Every interaction leads to that close.
Wow. And so you said that even starts in the beginning. You called it moment of truth.
I love that. And that, to me, when I hear you say that, it kind of fits into the whole mindset concept. That, like, you are marching towards something, and as Jared always says, it's that return on relationship, understanding that, this is where it's flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really cool. I love that. I think ABC is always a good thing to be remembering.
Always be closing.
Always be closing. Now, you talk about this in terms of effective, like a pathway for effective closing strategies. And you have several, and I'd love to go through those with you. So number one, be assumptive.
Yeah. So, so I just want to share too with the folks that are joining us that our curriculum around the ask is really deep. So today, we're pulling out some of the nuggets, right? There's like, we could have a whole session just on be assumptive. So I just wanted to share that we're really pulling out just some of the golden nuggets around these. But be assumptive, again, is kind of that mindset, assume success. Right? You are not asking a stranger because you have gone through the cause selling process. So that you should have that, that assumptive feeling when you walk in, that you can assume that this is going to go in the right direction because you've had the conversations, that your potential donor is ready for this conversation.
Right. Because that's pieces. Thank you for really putting this into perspective here. We are diving deep into this and really touching the high levels. But if you look down on the slide in front of you, you'll see kind of that coral color. That might not be the right like Pantone color, but you see the coral color there. And that also, and then the darker blue. So those steps and phases of this really dove into basically what you just said, Tony, is we should be assumptive because we've done our homework. We've researched them on Zillow. Hint, hint, that was one of the tips, right? We've done all of this work to engage them in conversation that now we are in this step where we are engaging them with an invitation to make a sizable, perhaps, donation. So so yes, I'm just glad that you really put this into perspective because there is so much more to talk about each and every one of these strategies, and we are barely scratching the surface with just some high level tips here.
Absolutely. Now you talk about another piece of this is it's okay to say there are benefits that when you engage in a donation, especially a sizable donation, there are benefits, and it's not just like feeling good. It can be very, very specific. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so when we talk about provide summary of benefits, we're talking about the benefit to the donor, but also the benefit to the organization. We're reminding them of the benefit of their investment to the organization and how that investment is going to benefit the community that's being served by the nonprofit. So we're reminding them of those benefits because, again, we've learned through the course of our needs discovery and getting to know our potential donor what in our organization they're passionate about. Is it a specific program that is we currently have? Is it something that is futuristic that we're going to launch that they're really excited about? So it's reminding them during the ask of these benefits that have kept them engaged in this conversation with you to get to this point where you're going to make the ask. And then it's reminding them of the benefits to themselves, which hopefully, again, that you've uncovered throughout the course of developing your relationship.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's smart. And I think that's something that a lot of times we don't do. It seems to me that when I think about this, we don't always kind of share that. And I think especially when you're looking at sponsors where there might be naming rights or there might be additional engagement pieces, that becomes something helpful in making a decision, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe there's a matching gift opportunity, depending on the size of their gift, maybe you want to have the conversation about their gift becoming a matching gift so that it will encourage others to follow their lead. So there's so much we can talk about, around the benefits for both the donor and the organization. But in your closing, it's beneficial to remind them of the benefits that have been identified, along the way.
And so just before we go on to strategy number 3, you're really saying that this should not be a surprise. It really should be a summary that you've already had these discussions. And as Jarrett said, if you followed the path, you've been pulling all these pieces together.
Absolutely. And a key here also, it's recommended that you do not offer a new benefit.
Okay.
Right? Because if you're at the point where you're making an ask, your presentation has probably, in most cases, supported a specific X, Y, and Z, a specific benefit. So when you get to the ask, you don't want to confuse the decision-making process with a new benefit.
You want to stay consistent from the previous conversations.
Absolutely.
That makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
I would think naturally we're like, oh, but I'm going to throw one more benefit in there. I'm going to sweeten the pie, right? And what I just heard you say, Tony, is that adds confusion and complexity that may actually hinder the assumptiveness that you made before, and it could counteract.
Absolutely. And you may be assuming the wrong thing by adding that, by thinking it's a benefit, where in fact it could trigger something that now they have more questions.
Right. Or
so now,
up like, nope, can't do this right now.
Right. So, so you have to be careful around that, and you have to, be strategic. And if you're going to introduce a new benefit, do it with intention and understand what the, what the response may or may not be in doing so.
Wow. So now going on to effective closing strategy number 3, ask directly for the gift.
Just ask for it. Just come right out, be straightforward, and just ask for it.
Yes.
So, so there are some relationships that we develop where we have that kind of comfort level, right? Or depending on the social style of the potential donor, that donor may be a driver. And once, I don't need a whole lot of, of sparkles and confetti and, and fireworks. Just, I want to know what it is that you're going to ask me for. Just be direct. But in doing so, try and use terminology like we, when we partner together to support these, so really just leaning into that kind of terminology like we, staying away from negative terms like don't. So something you want to stay away from would be, if I'm talking to the donor, I might say, well, don't you want to support us?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
there's so much psychology into that. I was in a leadership program, and I no longer would say in my emails, please don't hesitate to contact me. Well, really what I'm telling them to do is to hesitate to contact me. Right?
Right.
So taking that don't and the negative words out of your language really elevates the assumptions for that, successful ask. And so I love that you bring this up, because when I heard this in the leadership program, it blew my mind. I had not heard that before, because even like now our predictive text just throws that in there as the assumption that that's
Correct.
what we say. And I have to always delete that negative word. So that is wonderful. I think, again, that tip, if I knew that 20 years ago, right there with you, Tony, I would have been so much more successful.
Yes, exactly. That and the we, right? I mean, it just seems so obvious, right? That this work is all, collaboration. When a donor invests in our organization, it's collective impact, right? It's all of us coming together. So it just seems so natural and organic that we would use terminology like we. But I am a development officer, and I have goals to reach, and I have expectations from my board of directors and from my executive director, CEO. I have expectations from the community that I serve. So, so it's easy when we're making the ask to say I, because there's so many things that I know I need to do and own and be responsible for.
Instead of we have the opportunity to make an impact. Yes. So using that we is really powerful.
Yeah.
I love that. And that goes to then looking at number 4 of the effective closing strategies, ask for a specific amount.
Yes, ask for a specific amount. Again, through your cost selling process, because remember, you're a cost selling champion. So through your cost selling process, you should have been able to, through conversation with the potential donor, come to some speculation around the level of gift that they may be capable of giving. So Jarrett brought up, some of our techniques that you can use. Zillow. I mean, there are techniques that you can use to get an understanding of a potential donor's assets. It doesn't tell the whole story, but you can get some information there to help you kind of gauge what number you may want to throw out there when you're asking for the specific amount. The other thing to keep in mind is to try not to under ask, right? Ask an amount that is going to challenge the donor. The donor will eat, if you ask for 50,000, the donor will easily say, well, that's not capable, but I can make a $10,000 gift. Right. I can make a $25,000 gift. Rarely, if you ask for 10,000, will the donor say, oh, well, I could do 25,000. So, they're typically, willing to have the conversation about whittling that down, but rarely are they going to say, well, you under asked, here's another 20,000 for you. So,
and I have heard, Tony, this hasn't happened to me, but I have heard from some of my peers, that if they made an ask too large, let's say 50,000, they literally have had the person say to them, wow, I'm honored that you considered me at this level. So they
Absolutely.
really saw that as a positive, not a negative, right? So really as, wow, I'm honored that you thought of me coming in at this transformational level.
Mm-hmm.
So I, again, just know that it's not, end of conversation. There's still so much more to the conversation. But Tony, you blew my mind earlier when you said, and I can't remember if it was our chitty chat or when it was, but it was definitely today. And you said, ask the donor what their largest gift has been before.
Yeah.
So about that, because that's mind blowing.
Yeah. So, as part of your needs discovery, and again, I recognize that this isn't going to be the scenario with every relationship that you're building, right? But you're going to have those opportunities where, the relationship is such that you can ask during the needs discovery part of the cost selling cycle. I'm curious, what's the largest gift you've ever given to an organization, and how did that make you feel?
How did that make you feel? I think that's the powerful piece. How did it make you feel? Yeah.
And maybe, and maybe they'll answer and maybe they won't. So if they say, well, I really don't want to share with you the amount, then ask the question again, that, say, well, that's fine, but how did it make you feel?
Yeah.
Yes. I love
and go ahead and use the opportunity to drive and engage more passion.
Perfect. Thank you.
I love that, because to me, when you engage more fully, it speaks to what you've been talking about all along, is the mindset and unlocking the fear that you would have, but really pulling that person in a more collaborative way. And
Mm-hmm.
you just said, we have to be using the word we. And when you have somebody that can witness to you, like, the joy of their philanthropy and the meaning behind their gift, to me, that is what Jarrett always says, return on relationship. That is that piece that's binding you in a more sustainable way, instead of just, okay, here's a check, get off my back, type of thing.
Right. And another thing to watch out for is during the course of the ask, your anxiety, you could just all of a sudden build up some anxiety, and then at the last minute decide to under ask. So go in being mindful of what you want to ask for and stick with it. Don't let anything in the environment or any self-created anxiety during the process of the ask make you all of a sudden, in that one tiny moment, ask for less than you went in intending to ask for.
So I don't know if you advise this, but I've done this before where I always, because I'm a visual person, I always come in with a tangible item. And again, via the phone, via email, via, Zoom or video conference. And the ask is written down. That way I cannot change it.
Mm-hmm.
Smart. That's a smart thing. Hey, everybody, I want to remind you that we are here with Tony Beall of Fundraising Academy. We've been talking about effective closing strategies. We're on to point 5. We are going to go a little bit over our normal allotted time. So stay with us. If you have to jump off because your day has involved you in something else, maybe you're going to ask a donor, and we hope you are. You can, good luck. You're going to do great. It's a mindset. You can always get the rest of this as well as all the other shows that we've done with Tony and Fundraising Academy on our archive. Okay, so now after I said all that, the screen says, remain silent.
Right. So, which thank you, Julia, you proved is just so difficult, right? Just by nature, it's so difficult for most of us to live in any space of silence. But once you have finally made the ask, zip it. Give the potential donor the space to respond.
Now we're all like,
I know that was our moment of silence, right? It was totally uncomfortable, but that's when you have to. I did that intentionally. That you have to learn to embrace that, because if you fill the void, you could make the wrong assumption in filling the void. So just leave the silence. That you have asked an open-ended question. Right? You haven't ended the ask in a closed-ended question. You've ended the ask in an open-ended question. So the potential donor knows that you're waiting for them to respond. So live in the silence.
Live in the silence. Take a drink of your coffee, your tea, whatever it is. I also recommend that you keep eye contact, right? Like as best as you can. It doesn't mean that you check your phone or that you write something down. Like stay confident, and then use that opportunity to take a sip of whatever, even if you're not thirsty, take a sip.
Right.
You cannot speak when you're drinking.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, so then not to be like Nancy negative, but if you are moving through this process, which I think if you've really followed this and you've really tried to navigate your mindset to be positive and I love that word, assumptive, and yet you stumble or you fail to close, you've got some ways to navigate this, and they're pretty smart because you're not just saying, okay, see you later, never darken my door. You're going to go back and kind of think about what has happened. So let's talk about that, because this, to me, when I see this, Tony, it makes me think that you haven't done your work.
Well, I mean, that could be part of it. That could be part of it, but that's not always the scenario, right? So here we talk a little bit about timing. Something may have changed in that potential donor's life, where now just the timing isn't good. Everything leading up to this conversation may have indicated differently, but then once you're there and making the ask, something changed. Right. So it may not have anything to do with the work that you've done in preparing to make the ask. But where we might have missed, some opportunities in better understanding the potential donor and their commitment might have been in the need discovery. Maybe we need to go back. And again, you will know best whether or not a failure to close opens the door for you to continue a conversation, or if you should just thank them for their time, celebrate their interest in philanthropy, and move on. Right. So again, that's a whole conversation to itself. But and you'll know that, again, because this is not a stranger that you're talking to. So, there may have been some inadequate prospecting in the qualification process. Again, insufficient need discovery. There may have been a critical question we didn't ask, or maybe we weren't listening as intently as we should have and missed a piece of information. It could be any number of things. But it doesn't mean, again, a failure to close may just mean come back to me later. It may mean that you need to go back to the need discovery part of the cycle with this potential donor, engage in some more conversations, and then work yourself back up to a presentation and an ask, at another time.
So let me ask you this question. Would it be appropriate to say very honestly, are you comfortable with us continuing this discussion? Or do you feel like maybe another time, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, how far do you push, or how far do you communicate that is the door open or is the door closed?
So typically what I would do, this is what has worked for me, is I would usually set some time frame that I would follow up with them, but I'm going to follow up with them to give them an update on the programs that they were interested in funding.
Love it. Love it.
So so I'm going to be giving them some type of update. It's not coming back to, I'm not going to start again at the ask.
Yeah.
That next meeting is not me starting again at the ask. It's me starting somewhere else in the cycle, and it's me giving them an update on where the organization is.
I love that. In my head, again, very visual, I'm thinking Chutes and Ladders, right? The board game Chutes and Ladders. So it's not like we're going straight back to the beginning.
Right.
We're still staying in that ask area. And I always use this opportunity when available, to say, I would love to continue the conversation. And in fact, we have X, Y, and Z event coming up. Would love for you to come and attend as my guest. And so we can keep the conversation going. So if you are interested and the timing is better, I want to make sure that you stay informed.
Right, exactly. And there might be opportunities, if we're talking about a potential for a major donor, maybe there's an advisory board that you might offer for them to participate in, so that they become, connected in a deeper way with the organization. It makes your next ask a little easier, maybe.
Well, I feel like galas are starting to open up, right?
They are
looking at what that looks like, even in a virtual space, hybrid space, some in person, depending on your community. So use this as an opportunity to invite this individual. Maybe someone else, right, would love to invite you and a guest, or your partner, spouse, whomever. Join me as my guest and use that as part of it. Flipping the script here, Tony, this is a bit of a curveball, but I hope you don't feel I'm backing you in the corner here. I have a client that's working on a capital campaign, and they just found out that another organization is about to launch their capital campaign. So now they're thinking timing is critical, right? And so we need to ask the people on our list before the other organization asks. So when it comes to timing, I guess I want to reiterate that sometimes you could wait too long, right? And that it's better to ask earlier than later. But what would you, and again, completely curveball question, what would you recommend when you've been working on this process and you find out there's another potential big ask from a community leader to the same supporter?
Love that question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of a good kind of solid answer to that. I'm asking myself more questions and I'm providing myself with answers, right? Like, so the first thing is the other organization in the same kind of, do they have a similar mission? Mm-hmm. So that might make me think about, what am I going to do? Am I going to continue to move forward? Or is the competition really just going to crush me? Right. If we're, and I use words like competition because that's, again, 501c3 is a tax status, not a business model. I don't think of us as competitors, right? I think Our curriculum at the Fundraising Academy is an added value to the other professional development that's offered in the sector. I don't look at any of it as competition. It's all value add. So I would consider those kinds of things. People tend to give to more than one organization that they're passionate about. So I wouldn't automatically think that if Mr. and Mrs. Jones are getting approached by organization A, B, and C and getting approached by us, they may very well give to both.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. Thank you for that. Again, I know it's a curveball, but that is a real time scenario that happens.
It is.
And I do feel as we all move into the recovery phase from the global pandemic, and I realize we're still in it, but we're working towards recovery. I do feel a lot of organizations will be either increasing their annual campaigns or launching capitals. And so that's something to consider. But absolutely. Okay, well, thanks. I usually get those curveballs from Julia. So
I know. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Well, that's kind of true. But I really I'm sitting here going, yeah, I can see that, Jarrett. So thank you.
Well, and especially with capital campaigns, it's a challenge, right? Because we all know how much work goes into a capital campaign, just the silent stage, right? Because you're trying to raise at least 50% before you go public. There's a lot of challenges.
That's right.
Well, let's continue about the reality of sometimes not moving forward the way you want with the ask or having some issues with closing. And since we're really focusing in on that ABC, always be closing, you talk about recognizing some signals. And sometimes this can be really, really hard, especially if we are so worried about what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're asking, and we can't understand what's going on across the table. You talk about the chef technique.
Yeah, so this is a fun part of our curriculum. So, when we talk about recognizing signals, right, we have an opportunity to recognize verbal and nonverbal signals from our potential donors. And even on Zoom, it's easy to recognize some of those symbols. So this chef technique talks about the chin and the cheek. Are we touching our chin, or are we holding our cheek? So we kind of dive into, what might that mean? And in most cases, those, it's an affirmative. They're listening, they're thinking. So there isn't really a whole lot of negative connotations that come along with folks rubbing their chin or touching their cheek. The H is the hands, which can be a little more difficult on Zoom, but fidgety with the hands kind of calm in their lap, so just recognizing some of and I do pretty good on Zoom. Sometimes I can be all over the place, right? Because I get so passionate and animated about it. So I hold my hands like this during our Zoom calls so that, they're not flying all over the place. But that's what the H is. It's really looking at, what are folks doing with their hands and what might that tell you, in terms of what they're feeling and how they're responding to the ask. The other, of course, is eye contact. Are you getting any direct eye contact from the potential donor? Are they constantly looking away? It is more challenging on Zoom. The distractions, are they constantly looking, to the left or to the right because, they've got four kids that are being homeschooled that are running around, or whatever it is. The dog needs to go use the bathroom, right? So all of these things that we wouldn't necessarily experience in a more traditional kind of face-to-face setting. So that's what
or they may not even know where their camera is. True.
That's a good point.
Right? Because we are so trained to look at this pinhole. We do this every day, Julia. But I've had so many conversations that I do not think the person is engaging with me because they're looking at me, right? And so again, just as we move through this, I wanted to throw that out as a possibility.
No, I'm really glad that you did. Absolutely. I love it.
It's true. We battle that every day.
So C was cheek and chin, H is the hands, E is eyes, and then the F is really just friendly. How friendly are they being during this, this conversation and making the ask? Are they being receptive? Are they being cold? What are you feeling in terms of their friendliness around the conversation, the ask? Do you want me to jump into the trial close?
Yeah.
So the trial close, if you're not really sure how it's going and whether or not you should go ahead and make the ask, then try a trial question like, is this what you were looking for? Have I reiterated the benefits to you the way that I've understood them through the course of our conversations? So getting them to, a trial close gets them to a place where they're giving you an affirmative answer, and here you can get away with some closed-ended questions because what you want to get them to say yes, right? You want to hear yes as many times as possible. So you have to be strategic around it, of course, what you're asking. But it creates an opportunity for you to do that trial close, to ask something that's going to get them to make a decision in the affirmative, and then you can move closer to the actual ask.
I love it. And again, you're asking for, you're reminding us to be using that word we and making it more of a union of, resources and engagement, which I think is brilliant.
Yes. And you've really done a phenomenal job when you start hearing the potential donor say we.
Yeah.
That's a huge win.
Home run.
Home run. Totally. Exactly. We don't have much time left. We have a question that's come in, and so I'd love to have your and so I get pegged with the big questions, I guess, huh? Beth is asking you, Tony, can you give us a sense of the cycle time to get through all the phases? On average, would it be days, weeks, or month? And while you talk about that, I am going to pull up the full cause selling screen, because today we embarked upon phase 3, step 7.
Yeah, and that was a really great question. And I'm going to give like the vaguest answer possible because it really varies, right? We're building relationships. There isn't a cookie cutter answer that I can honestly give to that question. This is where you're going to trust your intuition. You're going to trust the information that you're getting from the donor during the course of a conversation, because they're passionate with something that your passions align with. You may connect like this, and in your third meeting, you may feel ready to make the ask. With other donors, it may take 3 months, 6 months. To get them to that point. So as much as I would love to say that this process is so tight that it would only take you 3 weeks, it really does depend on the individual. That's what this is all about. It's relationship-driven, one-on-one interaction with potential donors. So it would be unfair to say that every donor could be moved through this process within a finite amount of time.
I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you, Beth, for that question. And
great question.
Yeah. And Tony, I think that's great. I loved what you said. And that is, when it gets down to it, how are you feeling? What is your mindset? And how are you gauging the reaction of that potential donor? And if there is a symbiotic relationship and everybody's, really wanting to move forward, you can move more quickly. Mm-hmm. But not always.
Right.
So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and again, a reminder, once we're at this point, phase 3, step 7 of the ask, this individual is not a stranger.
Right.
This is not a cold call ask at this point.
Julia, I want to ask you, how comfortable are you now, since we've gone through all of these to step 7? What is your confidence level when it comes to the ask?
So you know what? I was kind of teasing Tony that, this makes me nervous and everything, but I got to say, I love this.
Good.
And I have always been one of the, the ball busters, as they would say, which is horrible. But I was always like, let me at them, get the appointments, get them moved through, and then I want to be there. I have stood in front of a bathroom door, speaking to a group of people where people were literally coming in and out, going to the bathroom, and I was charged with asking for a very significant gift. I one time stood in front of an original Rembrandt painting in a private home and asked 5 couples for $1 million. I've sat across from people and asked for 25 bucks.
Perfect.
Sometime I've been successful, sometime I haven't. But for me, what I hear when listening to Tony is that, you know, passion for me has ruled the day. But that's not really a sustainable piece. So if you can be more intellectual about what it means to the donor, and you take away the ego of the I, you're going to be more successful. So for me, that's what's changed, you know, my perspective.
Yes.
Long story. I'm sorry to give you all that long thing, but I've been thinking about this. You know, every time when we meet, I have just been like, you know, for 30 years of asking, where could I have done better? Where could I have been more successful?
Well, I don't think you're done, so don't hang up your hat yet.
I'm not. And, you know, I am, it's Tony, and you said this from the get-go. Where was this 20 years ago? And I've got some age on both of you. And I'm like, yeah, where was this for me 30 years ago? Because it would have helped me. And amazing. Here's Tony's information. Tuesdays with Tony. That's going to be my new thing. I love it. I am so honored that you would spend this time and share all of your amazing knowledge. Reach out to Tony at fundraisingacademy.org. An amazing amount of information. Again, I'm Julia Patrick. I've been joined by Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd herself, CEO of the Raven Group. And again, we want to thank Fundraising Academy for joining us on this journey. You know, we have not done any series. I have a bee in my office, so sorry about that.
You have a bee in your bonnet?
Yeah, I do have a bee. I should have a bee in my bonnet. Fundraising Academy Cause Selling. This has really been a fabulous partnership for us. And I've learned so much. I know our viewers have as well. And again, we want to thank all of our presenting sponsors. Without you, we would not be here. And Fundraising TV is coming in. We're going to be talking about that more and more. And so we want to thank all of you today and remind you that if you can stay well, then you can do well.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.